Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of These Aren't the Nerds You're Looking For. Lorenzo and Kevin is sitting here with...
Kevin Horde.
How's it going, my friend?
It's going all right, you know.
Yeah. Just, we're rolling into September here. We're mid-September now at this point, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We're rolling right along, yeah.
You know, what can you do?
Yeah. We're going to be barreling forward, talking about more Clone Wars here. We will be talking about A Sunny Day in the Void today.
How about that?
Yeah. This is Season 5, Episode 11, with an air date of December 7th, 2012 in Canada, and then a day later, December 8th, 2012 for everywhere else, it seems. Yeah. Another one of those. There's been a lot of split premieres, it seems like, this season. So, not sure what Canada had airing that they got it a day earlier or we got a day later, you know.
Got nothing.
Yeah. We have the director of this episode is Kyle Dunleavy, and then the writer is Brent Friedman. And we are indeed carrying on the story that began last week with Secret Weapons. But first, before we get into that, the fortune cookie for this episode is when all seems hopeless, a true hero gives hope.
Who you got, buddy?
I don't know. I didn't think about this at all.
So, I mean, you know, when it comes down to hope, I think I always go back to either Leia or Jyn Erso, right? And I'm feeling more Leia out of this one. But, like, older Leia, like Episode 9 Leia, where she only really has, like, quotable quotes. Like, that's about all that she says in, you know, in dialogue.
You mean, like, she's saying things that are being written around her?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, when it's a sunny day outside, you gotta look at hope.
Yep. I like that. That's good. That's a good point. I don't know why my mind didn't gravitate towards that. But again, I didn't think about this at all. I just wrote it down, moved on with my life, watched the episode.
Yeah, it's like an older Leia is talking to Poe Dameron, you know.
Yeah, I see
because she definitely lectures him on what true hero-dom is. You know, it's not getting in an X-wing and blowing things up, right? Sometimes it's
not just fighting. Yeah,
sometimes it's pulling out of the battle when necessary, and
for sure.
But you know, she could have been giving him this Force vibe, you know, when she was like in her Force coma and he was ready to give up, you know, outside of Exegol. Mm-hmm. I'm sure that he felt hopeless, but she probably would have told him a true hero gives hope. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that all makes sense. That all makes perfect sense to me. Yeah.
So, that being said, I assume that we're going to see a flash forward aging Princess Leia or General Leia in this episode would be my guess.
No, it's definitely not.
No, that didn't.
Unfortunately, we do not.
Oh.
So, like I said, this episode is a continuation of last week's Secret Weapons. In fact, the newsreel starts with the declaration, Secret Weapons!
With an exclamation point.
Yes. So we are basically literally just picking up after last week where we had the bunch of droids have to get the decryptor, the Enigma machine, essentially, for whatever they needed that for.
That was to decode the Separatist transmissions.
Yes.
Which is weird because they intercepted a Separatist transmission and then decided that they needed to go and get the decoder ring to figure out what it was saying.
Right. They knew they picked up something but couldn't decode it, and then somehow they made the declarations like, well, there must be a actual machine thingy to decode this. We've already talked about that last week. They are astromechs and Whack and our Colonel Gascon are flying away, and that's essentially where we start up here.
Right? I got a question about Meeber.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a Jedi?
No.
So then what is he doing fighting in the Battle of Geonosis or reading maps in the Battle of Geonosis?
They still need I don't know. They still need a strategist of some sort, right?
Yeah, but aren't those Isn't that like
Aren't there
Mace
other
Windu?
Jedi to do that? No, I don't know. No. Hey, there's like, you need different strategists for different parts of the battle. You know, like I think no, yes, no.
Yeah, I mean, I feel ya, but it just seems a little odd because like usually what we're used to is either Jedi or clones.
Right.
With the occasional, I guess the occasional officer is thrown in there. So maybe.
Right, because we have Yularen. Yularen's neither.
That's who I was thinking of, and then there was definitely that Scottish one from when Boba Fett like pretended to be a cadet. I think it was an episode called Cadets, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can move on.
Yeah, because I think you're putting too much thought into Gascon, honestly. So essentially, this episode starts with the droids all fixing BZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're basically performing surgery on BZ, and Gascon is like, hey, why haven't you fixed the droid yet? And all the droids are like, he has a name.
Yeah, he calls them his command post, so they get ticked at him, but whatever.
Which is weird because wasn't it at the end of the last episode where Meeber kind of had a change of heart and was like, yes, you guys are more than droids. You guys are allies in this fight. And that's why they even took BZ to begin with. And then we have this complete turnaround of like, droids are just things and fuck y'all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that definitely happened. And then also, I think he was like staring off into hyperspace at the end of last episode, but then he's like back in the head of BZ in this one.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I don't know, maybe he's hanging out posters or something.
Right. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to breeze through this episode really quickly, and then we can kind of dive in.
Let's do it.
For a very obvious reason. So, Whack is piloting the ship, and it turns out that there are ice comets that are intercepting their hyperspace course.
Yep.
So they pull out of hyperspace.
Yep.
They have to maneuver around the comets. They aren't terribly successful, and while they are maneuvering, they do collide with a few of them, and the ship is damaged so severely that they need to land at the nearest planet. During this segment, there are the rest of the astromechs are doing their best. They're on the external of the ship trying to patch it back together as it's getting banged up by these comets.
Yep.
All the same, they have to land at this planet. So they land on this unnamed planet, but the planet is Abafar. And I don't believe it's named at all throughout the whole planet. Or through the whole episode, my fault.
You are correct.
But when they land, it is a desert planet, essentially, all the way around, but there are no even sort of landscapes as we are used to seeing on other desert planets.
They landed on a cue ball, is what they landed on. Yeah,
it's smooth all the way around. Colonel Gascon wants to wait by the ship, but R2-D2, who in the mayhem of the crash took the encryption module from the previous episode, and he's like, oh, no, we're going to continue on with the mission, and R2-D2 waves it out and is like, well, because I got this, and our whole job is to go send this encryption module off to whoever needs it.
Yep.
So R2-D2 rolls off, and Gascon is like, what are you doing? No, I'm the colonel. I'm the guy. R2-D2 is like, nope, we're moving forward. And then there's a back and forth about who's in charge and how the droids even know if they're going to the right place or whatever. And Gascon, again, says very disparaging things about the droids, where he's like, you guys are just programmed. You guys aren't trained to do anything. But then the droids, Whack especially, is like, well, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you were trained, but we were programmed? It's like, well, I was taught blah, 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 blah. And that's how this is working. And Whack brings up the point that's like, well, that sounds like you were just programmed to approach things in a certain way, too. So that exchange happens. At some point, Gascon doesn't want to move forward, so then he just gets really mad at all the droids, and then R2-D2 is like, whatever, I'm taking off. And so he does. He rolls off. Gascon sort of like loses his mind a little bit in the desert, there are moments where he starts seeing mirages and stuff like that. He points at things, the droids run towards it, and there's nothing there. So that's when R2-D2 and the other astromechs fully leave Gascon and Whack behind in the middle of the desert. So then, while Whack and Colonel Gascon are hanging out, Gascon is really having like an existential crisis out in the middle of the desert. And then Whack is trying his best to be like, hey, there are reasons to live. Like, you aren't a shitty general or colonel per se, you know? So then Gascon is like, well, yes, that is a good pep talk. And then at the same time, a bunch of like, I don't know, they look like gallimimuses from Jurassic Park, the first one.
I had the same thought.
Yep. So they look like alien gallimimuses. They are stampeding out of nowhere through the desert, and then Gascon is like, why, yes, this is a sign, or something like that, and then grabs on and rides one away, and so does Whack, and somehow they have the will to live, and then these alien gallimimuses take them to a watering hole that has a village nearby. So when they stop at the village, they're like, all right, that's cool. Like, these animals took us to where we actually needed to go. How about that? And they stop at the watering hole, and then when they look into the village, there are the other astromechs, and Colonel Gascon is like, hey, Whack, you aren't that bad, and I'm gonna make you, what does he make him? The
Corporal?
Corporal, that's the one. He like promotes him or something like that, because he's had a change of heart on whether or not the droids are effective pieces to be used within the war, I guess, or something like that. So, yeah, and then Whack is like, hey, I'm Corporal now, so now I'm in charge of the other astromechs. And then so he starts to try and give out commands, and R2-D2 is like, whatever, and then rolls off while Whack is trying to start a speech, and then we cue loud music, Ireson, and that's that one.
Yeah.
I figured with this episode it would just be easier to just go the way we would usually round up rebels.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have I have few comments, but I do have some questions.
Yes. Go ahead, please start.
Ice comets.
Yeah.
Affecting hyperspace.
Yes, that is my question too. That is my first question out the gate. What? This has never occurred before, right? Like,
no, I mean, there's been like gravity well generators in Star Wars lore. I don't know if that's currently a canon thing or not, but essentially by creating an artificial gravity well strong enough, you could pull ships out of hyperspace.
Okay.
Which presumably would be what space pirates would do, but I think the
you would have to know where the routes are, right?
Yeah, and that's also like that kind of implies that there's like an invisible highway that you can't see. But timing is super critical, right? Because you're in hyperspace and essentially, presumably like hyper time as well. And the fact that in this episode they're able to like detect ice formations, as Whack calls them. And then Gascon is like, oh, what do you mean ice formations? And he's like, oh, comets. And then they, drop out of hyperspace and they're in this comet blizzard, really. Mm-hmm. And they're moving from like left to right. I don't know. The whole motion of all this is weird. And it's
weird that there's a family of comets too. That was what was weird to me as well. I thought it was gonna be one comet that got in the way and was like the tail of the comet was messing with the hyperspace lane that they were on. Like, I could buy that almost, right?
Or even if like the comet is traveling like essentially where the hyperspace lane would exist in real time.
Right. That's what I mean.
That like, they have to drop out to like go around the comet or something. But
yeah, like in my head, like the translation of how this should work, if they were to think about it for more than like 2 seconds, is like make it in a way where like it's like a train stopped on the track on the road, right? Like unexpectedly, it just happened to break down there, and then the ship can sense that and knows, hey, there's an obstacle ahead, so we got to roll out of this. You got to make an adjustment, go around, and then carry on back, like rejoin the freeway afterwards, right? Like, living in California, this happens all the time where, yes, there is normal traffic where you just go with it, but there are times where something catastrophic happens and everything's at a standstill. So you just got to find that exit if you can make your way there.
Yep.
Go on some surface streets and then rejoin the freeway afterwards, right?
Right.
But it's just so weird to me that instead it's literally like comets in every direction you can see. Like that's what bothered me about this sequence.
And lots and lots and lots of them.
Yeah, like so many. They're maneuvering around them.
And they're coming like crossways though. So they have like the tail of motion, right?
Yeah.
But they're just kind of chilling in space unless this shuttle is also moving like crossways. It's very bizarre. My first thought on this whole thing was that one of two things must be the case, and that's either I don't understand hyperspace or whoever wrote this sequence does not understand hyperspace. And I have an opinion on which one of those is true, but I will keep that opinion to myself.
Sounds good. I'll let you keep that opinion yourself, and I won't say anything myself either. I will just say that, yes, this sequence was bizarre to me. And beyond that, too, in terms of, like, judging the sequence, too, like, I personally wasn't that thrilled by it as, like, an action sequence either, And I don't know if that's because I was, like, the physics of it were so broken to me that it was distracting me from just enjoying the moment.
Yeah, I never would have even considered this an action sequence.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, like, the tense, like, oh, we gotta fly around this, oh, no. Like, it's clearly, like, them trying to have the asteroid sequence in Empires without actually doing that,
Yeah.
Because, like, I think they couldn't use asteroids because, like, why would the hyperspace lane go through the asteroid belt? So then they're like, oh, comets, though. Comets move around, so maybe there's an unexpected comet. But then wouldn't you be able to calculate that the comets are... comets aren't unexpected. I don't...
Yeah, they're not like... They're not like winter blizzards. Like, this is a space blizzard is what happened here with giant snowballs.
So,
that are rigid and selectively break parts of a ship.
Because then at some point the tails disappear completely, which is weird too. Like, and then
they're just big snowballs.
Yeah, they're big ice asteroids. Essentially, is what they become.
Iceteroids.
Yeah. So it's silly, and then they crash on this planet, and then
I want to talk about the planet. Planet Q-Ball, right?
Yep.
Abafar, also known as the Void. I almost felt like a little double entendre or like inside joke or something going on because Gascon is like, doesn't he like try to like, I don't know, Google map this planet or something, and it's like he says that the description has I don't remember what the verbiage is exactly, but it's like the terrain is void, and it's like there was no information input, so it's like void information, but he takes that as this is what the planet is like
the description of the planet is void, or
right?
Like, or
as opposed to the
almost.
Information was void.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying?
So like there's like maybe replacing void, like maybe a better usage would be like null.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like there's null information there.
Right.
But for some reason, he read it as a word and not a descriptor.
Right.
He read it as a descriptor of the planet and not of the information.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So you can get a lot of trouble misinterpreting null and voids and stuff.
Yes.
Side story, just because we haven't had one of these in a long time, not in this
Sure.
capacity, but
Is this about Godzilla or
James Bond? No.
James Bond?
It is about a event that happened in California. I believe it's California, but somebody, you know how you can customize your license plate?
Uh-huh.
Somebody put in null, hoping that if a cop were to look up their license plate, that it would actually return back a null response so that cops could never find them. Right. So there is an approval process for California license plates, and this one went through. This one passed. What ended up happening, though, is that when other things went through a null sort of computer glitch, it went to this guy. So this guy was getting random people's like parking tickets and speeding violations or moving citations. Right. Because anytime a cop accidentally entered in a license plate incorrectly, that then went to a null license plate, it went to this dude.
That's hilarious.
So I just found that funny. I don't ask me why I know that off the top of my head, but I just found that shit hilarious. So
that's funny.
Yeah. Anyways,
I like it.
So careful with how you interpret null.
Right. Or void.
But yeah. So back to actual Star Wars things. Is there, because the title is A Sunny Day in the Void, and then they reference the void. Is there anything with the void that Star Wars seems to like? Because the other connection I had that is not exactly connected, but like is maybe one of those like coincidental things, but the company that runs that VR experience is called The Void. Like, it makes sense as a VR company. I just didn't have in mind this episode as being a potential reference back and forth, but that happens to be a separate company that partnered with Lucasfilm to create Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, I think that's just coincidental.
Oh, it's purely,
I don't
it's
think
surely
that there's, even selectively, like within Star Wars, I don't think that Void is sought after.
Favored.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just found it funny that there were multiple like Void points connected to Star Wars, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah. I get you.
And like very separate. Yeah, like very separate things. Like, because the VR thing makes sense to me because it's, if you take off the VR helmets, you're literally just walking around a big empty room, you know?
Yeah, you're walking around in the void.
Yeah, you're walking around the void. Yeah. But anyways.
That seems more interesting than what we have going on here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, man.
I don't even know what to talk about this episode. Okay, my next question. Okay. So the next thing I want to address then maybe is like the next big thing that happens is how R2-D2 purposefully like grabs the chip, and it's very clear that he goes for it. Do you think he's like has he been planning this the whole time? Is he like, fuck that, I'm gonna take this and we're gonna do this? Is this R2's intention the whole time?
Maybe. I didn't think of it that way, but it's possible.
Because like it's weird. It's like one of those like convenient things that happens during the crash as well, where like the chip falls out and then R2-D2 sees it and he's like, "Yep, there's my chance. That's what I was waiting for," and snatch and done.
Maybe the other thing, or the other way you could look at it, is not that he's saying there's my chance, but he's saying there's the MacGuffin for our mission, and I will keep it safe. Right. And then once they get planet side, and Gascon is like, nope, we're going to wait by the ship. And R2's like, nah, fuck that. We're going to continue the mission. And that's when he's like, looky what I have, you know. So I'm thinking R2 was more there to save the day. Like, because what's the point of fighting snowballs in space if you lose your MacGuffin cracker, you know?
I guess, like...
But then I guess he does, like, immediately, like, put it in jeopardy.
Right. He immediately rolls off with it.
Yeah.
to which really they're just wandering the desert for pretty much this entire episode. The only other item of interest I will refer to it as is they do come across another ship.
Yeah.
The crew's still inside.
So when they do come across this ship, Gascon is like, is that our ship? How long have we been gone? And the thing's like clearly deteriorated and whatnot, and like rusting and falling apart and all that stuff. But then we have this weird interlude where Whack is talking about how Gascon should commit suicide and put himself out of his misery. Like, weirdest, like, pro end your life thing, like
pro self euthanasia. Like, I don't know.
Right. So Gascon like climbs up this spire that's attached to the ship, and one of the droids is like, "Where's he going?" And Whack is like, "Maybe he's gonna jump. Wouldn't that be great for all of us? If that happens, I'm taking over. I'm going to be in charge." And then later, Gascon is like crazy and like running around and laughing and rolling on the ground and all this stuff. And Whack goes, "Yep, he should have jumped." And I'm like, really? And I mean,
it's a weird turn because like, I'm gonna say it here. I don't care about Gascon. I really don't. So like that weird, really, really macabre joke about him jumping, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna say I was amused by it, but I was definitely just like, okay, we're here. This is where we're at in this episode, because really, any sort of hurdle for these characters is generally like, other than landing here, like it's all it's a self hurdle, right? Like you either gotta be brave enough to leave the ship or just hang out and die, right?
Okay.
So to me, Whack kind of putting it in very stark terms like that, you know, everything. What's that?
I'm not down with that. I don't know.
Nah, I mean, I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that like everything, at least with this episode, there's no like external there's no external factors beyond just the planet itself, right? Just the planet itself being volatile, but then everything is decision based, right? Does that make sense? Like,
yes.
More than say like a bad guy holding a gun to your head and you got to figure out how to get out of that sort of situation, right? Like,
right.
You know, you aren't trying to like defeat a certain enemy here. Like you have to make the choice on how to survive this situation, right? So for Whack to put it in those terms, I think is kind of funny. It's like, it's putting it in very stark terms that Gascon needs to either get his shit together or he will die, you know? So will he die immediately or will he die over time, you know? Again, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. That's just kind of like what I'm getting out of.
I understand your interpretation of it, and there are definitely nods to that as well. Like when they find the ship and Whack goes and investigates and he sees the dead crew member, right? A living or a once living organism and a droid are both expired, right?
Yep.
And
R2 makes a comment too that was like, this is what would have happened if you stayed with the ship.
And I'm totally all right with that. But then when Whack is just like, hopefully he jumps. Yep, should have jumped. Man, that guy should have killed himself. That, like, at that point, I'm like, like, one, it's really weird to come up in Star Wars in general. Mm-hmm. But to be part of the Clone Wars?
And again, with these characters, because like it's just weird coming from Whack. I need somebody that I know is super sassy. Right. You know? Like I don't know who that could be. It would be like if somebody had the personality type of Yoda, but the filter of Hondo. Right? Maybe it could be Hondo.
Yeah, maybe it could be Hondo.
But as somebody who kind of grew up with the humor of like Airplane, Naked Gun, and then especially Scary Movie, you know,
right?
To which Scary Movie makes this exact joke and pays it off,
right?
It's not. I don't think there's a line cross per se. It is. I agree with you. It is weird that it is here in Clone Wars.
It's out of character for the show, even to be kind of placed as like a levity joking moment.
I'm trying to think back. I don't know. There's been some weird humor.
There has definitely been some weird humor, but not
macabre humor. That might be different.
Not promoting or encouraging suicide when things get tough. You know,
right?
Like this guy, Whack is like a physical internet troll,
right?
You know, and promoting trolling behavior, even back in the day, I don't agree with. I think it would be different if like when this mental break with Gascon happens, that he is showing self-dangerous behavior and Whack is working against that, not the other way around where Gascon is hopeless and then Whack's like should have killed himself.
Well, like it's interesting because like he's hopeless, not displaying any sort of like desire to do self-harm, and Whack is like, you might as well just jump. Like
that's what I'm saying.
But I don't know why I am not in the humor. This humor is definitely very subjective. You know.
Yep.
We'll put it there.
I'll just say it didn't land with me. That's all.
Yeah. I'm not saying it landed with me. I'm just saying it's not outside of my very guilty pleasure sort of humorous level, right?
Okay.
So I definitely have some vulgar taste level for comedy. I'm not saying this was a good joke, and I'm not even saying it landed with me at all.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, just to maybe spoil the end here. I don't think I cracked a single smile watching this whole episode. So,
yeah.
I'm having more fun talking about it now than I did watching it. So,
I completely agree.
Because I'm not gonna lie, I have like 4 lines of notes, and that's why I blasted through this episode as quickly as I did. So
you have more notes than I did.
Yeah,
for once. I have 2 other things.
Go for it.
Well, maybe 3 other things. One is the whole training versus programming thing, and I thought they made a good point. Like Whack gets his point across pretty well.
I agree.
That from a certain point of view, those things are the same thing.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And if that was like I think that's supposed to be like the central idea of this episode, that and like the existential struggle of the void, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they should have kind of separated those things. Like the Clone Wars is completely okay with like separating ideas out and drawing episodes out, like
right. Because like when it comes to programming and training, I agree with you to the sense that like I would have liked that explored more in maybe other realms of this is again stupidly serious and completely out of line with what a children's show should maybe tackle, but like that sort of idea of indoctrination versus training versus programming versus brainwashing.
And that is totally all wrapped up into the philosophies of the Jedi and what Palpatine
Absolutely.
is trying to do with Anakin.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I don't feel that in this episode those two separate ideas neither of them were given the time to develop, the time that they deserve. It's like these little nuggets in a Happy Meal that you didn't get the French fries, but you got the apples and they were out of the toy. Right? That's this episode. And like those couple little things, I'll say positive things about, but they weren't allowed the time to develop into something meaningful, really.
An actual interesting, cohesive thought. Yeah.
Why does Wax stay with Gascon and not leave with the droids?
I have no idea.
Just so that they can come to the conclusion that they're going to throw a third element in there, and it's not training, it's not programming, it's instinct, and Whack made a point, and then we get our Gallimimus rundown, which was the best part of this episode.
Was it? I mean, I guess. Back to the why Whack and I've said his name, so Gascon.
Yep.
See, I've already forgotten his name, and we've been talking about him nonstop.
Yep.
So bad. I think the only reason is maybe so that Whack and Gascon can come to some sort of mutual understanding after the macabre jokes that Whack was throwing at Gascon. That's the only thing I can think of after. Only though because we've had this discussion now. Like, I didn't put that much mind at all to the jokes that Whack was throwing at Gascon throughout the episode.
Okay.
But from like a script on paper sort of standpoint, that's the only I can sort of see that as maybe being the thing, because then that leads Gascon to like giving Whack more of the benefit of the doubt of being an essential role player for the Clone Wars rather than just like a dumb droid. Do your part, droid. You're programmed to do one thing. It's like, wait, but no. He indeed can tell me not to kill myself in this barren desert planet, I guess.
Okay.
That's as much as I got. And then, the Gallimimuses. My question is where the Gallimimuses come from, and why did they leave the watering hole? Why do they run back? And then...
they left the food hole, and they're running to the watering hole.
That makes sense.
And then when they're hungry, they're going to run back to the food hole. My question is, so this is a desert planet, right?
Yeah.
And there is a canonical reason why the planet does not leave tracks, and it does not make a damn bit of sense. I looked into it a little bit, and because of whatever haze is going on in the atmosphere and the way that the light is diffused, there are no shadows, so that is why you cannot see the tracks in the sand. Not because you don't leave tracks, but because you can't see the shadow of the track. It's silly.
Yeah.
It's very silly.
I will say, though, that's a good point, because I did kind of notice that the... I will say this. We are always on darker planets or planets where the event happens during nighttime. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of sneaking around and more sneaking around and meetings inside the ship around the holograms and stuff like that.
Right.
And I only know this because I have to find these screenshots for the thumbnails for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I come across this problem a lot of like very dark screenshots that I don't want to like adjust them too much, because I get their thumbnails, and it's I like to leave them as is, because they were designed in a certain way for a certain reason for the episodes, but like a lot of them are very dark, so I find myself brightening a lot of them just so that they register at all on a tiny little thumbnail that maybe nobody else is paying attention to except me. And then when they land on this very bright planet, I was like, yes, this is going to be a much easier one to find cool, crisp thumbnails for.
Yeah.
But I then noticed, there weren't like shadows being rendered or anything, which I found really interesting. There is a very unique look to how this planet is. And in a CG show like this, it's probably really easy because you can still create those light sources and then just tell it not to render the shadows, Because in video games, I don't know, again, another side thought, but like a difficult thing to render is shadows and coming from specific light sources.
Mm-hmm.
So in video games, what they'll do is like approximate shadows, So they're kind of just like, hey, there should be a shadow here. Just kind of throw things down here. And then a couple of years ago, software came out called ray tracing that now will be able to tell software will be able to know, like, these are the light sources. This is where the light goes. And then when something blocks it, this is how you reflect that light back to the camera. And then this is where the shadows would be. So you'll get real-time shadows based on the lights that are happening. And these are a big feature coming up in the next generation video game consoles. So that's going to be PS5 and the Xbox Series X consoles.
Yeah.
Dumb name. And then they just announced this week, too, the Xbox Series S, the cheaper little brother of it, which is equally silly. But anyway, so like this whole like ray tracing thing is a huge feature of the next generation of consoles. So this will be very interesting to see how real-time rendering works for this versus, I'm not sure. I don't know how that I'm sure when translated back into like a produced bit of television or CG animation like Toy Stories or Pixar's and DreamWorks and what have you, I'm not sure if that shadow technology works the same way. Like, I'm sure there's a better, easier way to do that because you don't have to worry about it real time, if that makes sense.
Right.
But when this episode was lacking shadows, it was just kind of where my mind went because that is a thing that can happen where like shadows for whatever reason don't get rendered.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates this like funny thing where like everything just looks flat, like everything is just perfectly lit, in a video game.
It's like watching THX 1138.
Just light everywhere.
Like, is this just an endless white plane or what's going on here?
This is why too, like if you so taking a live action example, this is why sitcoms look particularly flat. Like if you aren't versed in like television cinematography speak per se, I'm pretty sure I could still show you like an image from Friends or Big Bang Theory versus say like Breaking Bad or Mad Men.
Right.
You will be able to tell that they look different because with the live shows there is light everywhere that is getting tossed everywhere, and hence nobody's ever in shadow. Everybody's always perfectly lit. Nobody's house is ever set up that way, But yeah, so like you can kind of still see it happening in live action to some degree, like in terms of how they approach lighting, But then when you come to like the animation realm, these are thoughts that are being planned out and executed on a heavy duty scale. So, anyways, I found all of that interesting.
That's good.
This is where my technical nerdiness comes in. I'm sure with the ray tracing things, there are a lot of things I oversimplified or got completely wrong. So, feel free to correct me later. So
we have a video game friend that I will need to reach out to.
Yes.
And find out his thoughts on that, or see how accurate you are.
Right. Yeah. So again, big selling point, ray tracing the next one in the next gen of games. So, but yeah, anything else? And do we know anything else about the Gallimimuses?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we even know what they're called?
I think I looked them up, and there's something like void something.
Strange rat-like creatures is what they're called on Wikipedia.
Yeah, void striders.
Is that what they are?
That's what it says. And even then, strider is like lowercase, so I don't think that's like an official name. It's just It's like, hey, these are void striders. I don't think they have like a name. I think that's more of a description than a name, but I could be wrong. So it is literally their only appearance. So
yep.
We're so enthused by this episode.
I know.
I'm over here talking about ray tracing and shit, trying to spruce this up a little bit. So
I was made sad by a droid trying to get a human being to kill themselves. What can I say?
I get it. I understand. Oh yeah, I fully understand.
I feel like the most pertinent information that I got out of this Void Strider Wikipedia page is that our group is called the D Squad. That's what our droids are called. The D Squad.
I don't like that name.
Yeah.
I get it, but I don't like that name.
That's it. Okay.
Anything else? Anything else?
Nothing else. Yeah. Moving forward, where are we going from here? Obviously, we're going to escape from this planet. How do you think that's going to happen?
They're going to make contact with the Jedi based on whatever this random village is that they found, and then they're going to send an encryption code or whatever, and then, I don't know, we're moving. I don't know. To me, this was such like a weird dead episode that just I got nothing out of this episode. So
yeah.
That said, do you want to just go? What's your rating on this, sir? Let's just make it official.
Thumbs down.
Yep. I'm right there with you. So
I don't think I need to justify my response. I'm more interested to hear anybody that gives this one like a thumbs up and is like really excited about it. I don't feel like anything pertinent happened in this episode.
Like, I would understand if somebody, like, okay, so maybe coming from the opposite end, because, like, I was trying to say maybe, like, in my head while I was watching this, I'm like, maybe this isn't, like, a bad episode per se. I just don't love it, but it's not a bad episode, but can I justify that somehow? But, like, so, like, I could see somebody just, like, being agreeable to the episode and being like, yes, it's fine. It's there. All right, sure. But, yeah, I am curious if there's somebody who, like, really loves this episode and thinks this is, like, 22 solid minutes of television. Right?
Yeah, I want to meet that person, and I want to go have a beer with them or several and
pick their brain
let them explain to me what I'm missing.
Well, I just want to talk to them because, hopefully they can fill whatever apparent black hole in my heart exists from just being so joyless watching this episode. Like, what kind of half glass full personality you have, and I need to get some of that.
I mean, I have generally I have a glass half full personality, and that I think we both are in agreement that I am often more optimistic.
You're the kinder to the show for sure.
Yeah, but so this one, thumbs down. And like you said, I don't think this is bad. It's not like, oh my God, that was terrible. I think it's uneventful. I think that the points that they tried to make were not given the time to be built upon and fleshed out.
Yeah.
And
I was struggling to care for this episode,
I think that this one is boring.
All what you said to me, I just, at the end of the day, at the end of this conversation, to me, nothing about this episode made me care. Yeah. It didn't make me care about the characters. It didn't make me care about the situation. This is definitely the kind of episode that, number one, I forgot existed. And I'm sure probably like during my first view through, this was probably like on. I was like, you know what? I'll throw some Clone Wars on. And this is the episode I was like, you know what? I'm going to go fucking vacuum while this episode's on. Like, this is where the episode stands, right? Like,
I'm interested to see what's coming next because this feels...
No.
I actually am because, where we came from was what it was. And then we have this. And then we're going somewhere. And I'd like to know where we're going. If this is just part of the journey, I can handle that. But if the destination isn't an improvement over this, then, this will definitely go in the not my favorite arc category. So.
What's funny that I want to mention too, and this is definitely a higher up view of the show, is when people ask Star Wars fans who have not seen Clone Wars, I always say, look, seasons 1 and 2, they're a little rough, but it gets better. It definitely gets better. You know, that's my assessment of the whole show.
Yeah.
But now that we're doing it, watching the show in this format and reviewing it one by one.
Yep.
And then we get some, sorry to say, like this is going to be harsh wording, but we get some trash episodes here and there in season 5.
Yep.
With characters that definitely very much matter, like at the start of this season, right?
Yep.
This has been an interesting turnaround in my view, shall we say. Not to say that it doesn't get better. It's just maybe the sort of blanket, the show is definitely good by the end in general sort of thing. Like
right.
It's rockier than I remember. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah. Anything else to say about this episode?
No.
All right. That said, next week is Missing in Action. If you were curious at all, that is the name of next week's episode, Missing in Action. What the bloody hell could happen after this? They're all hanging on a desert planet. Hopefully it just means all the droids are missing in action and the Jedi figure this out or something. I still don't care. That said, if you want to tell us that we're being just way too sour on this episode, please reach out to us. Yeah, head out over to notthenerds.com. That's an easy way to find us. All of our social medias and stuff are there. But otherwise, you can find us in the regular places, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, sort of things. But again, notthenerds.com, easiest place to go. But as always, we like to give thanks to all the people that helped make the show what it is, and that would be Kevin Warren at They Call Me K-Dub on Twitter. He put together the cover art that you see. We also like to thank Lindsay at strangefansmusic at gmail.com. She put together the jingle that you hear at the beginning and end of every episode. And forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on this last.
Anthony at Blue the Beard.
Anthony, at Blue the Beard. Thank you so much. My brain is dead.
You can be forgiven after this one.
After this episode, seriously, just so dead. But at Blue the Beard, thank you. He's the guy who put together notthenerds.com. So, wherever you're listening to this or, please give us a like, subscribe. Again, comments. We love reading comments, So, whether that be on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, we dig it. Facebook, all that jazz. But until next week, I've been Lorenzo.
Kevin Horde here.
These aren't the nerds you're looking for.
Bye-bye.